have two babies very hungry wanting to be fed. One baby is a patient baby and waits indefinitely until its mother is ready to feed it. The other baby is an impatient baby and cries lustily. Screams and kicks make everyone unpleasant until it is fed. We know perfectly well which baby is attended to first. That's the whole history of politics. You have to make more noise than anybody else. You have to make yourself more obtrusive than anybody else. You have to fill out the papers more than anybody else, and you have to be there all the time to see that do not snow you under. This statement was given by Emilienne Pankhurst in her Freedom or Death speech. Every day there are sacrifices that go unnoticed. Suffragettes in the 20th century were beaten, sent to prisons, shunned, and harassed for standing up for women who did not even exist yet. They did not just speak up for women's rights. They fought, they yelled, and they would be damned if anybody snowed them under. They devoted their entire life to making women's equality a reality. Emilienne Pankhurst was one of these devoted suffragettes. Her theatrical, moving speeches, such as Freedom or Death, shifted the nation towards the direction of equality. Even at a young age, she truly shaped the future for women and shook society so hard that they could never turn back. At the age of 8, Emilienne was introduced to the world of women's suffrage. Her parents always taught her to be politically active, but also encouraged her to be nothing more than a wife and a mother. When she reached 20, she married Richard Pankhurst and gave birth to 5 children. But her life was not secluded only being a wife and a mother. She joined various suffrage groups, and after they would fail, she would join more. Often she was denied membership to specific political groups, such as the Independent Labor Party, due to her sex. Rejection did not stop her, however. In 1898, she founded her own organization, the Women's Social and Political Union, or WSPU, which was dedicated to women's suffrage movements, with speaking with deeds, not words. They were often involved in carjackings, window breakings, and arson. And when World War I broke out in 1918, the Representation of Women's People Act granted votes to women only to over the age of 30. Pankhurst transformed the WSPU machinery into the Women's Party, which was dedicated to promoting women's equality in all aspects of life. She worked tirelessly to gain women's rights to vote and live in equality. And even if some women did not have the courage, she worked tirelessly to gain women's rights to votes and live in equality, even if some women did not have the courage to win it for themselves. Emilienne died in 1929 at the age of 69, and at her funeral, the New York Times deemed her the most remarkable and political agitator of the 20th century. And the Daily Mail described her funeral procession like a dead general in the midst of a mourning army. And even though the movements of the WSPU were unusually violent, like most in the UK, she was the one that truly fought. She changed the course of our history. And I realized my entire audience are dudes. So I want to try to think of yourself as a woman. Think what you'd be if Emilienne did not fight for you. You would have no voice, you would have no education. You wouldn't be watching a speech, and I wouldn't be speaking it. You would be a puppet, sadly doing as those naive little boys say these days, just working in the kitchen. Your mind would be what everyone else wanted it to be. Emilienne risked militant tactics to get noticed, so that politics would finally wake up and no longer ignore her. In her speech, she calls upon men in the English government to put themselves in a woman's position, to admit if they were put in a situation where they were wanting to give rights or be killed, what would they choose for themselves, for their daughters? She calls out all of those people who worked against her, saying that the government is admitting to this revolution because advocates for women's rights brought them there. The dedication of these advocates shook the government out of its sexism and made a future for women in the UK and Americas that we're still experiencing today. One of my favorite lines, besides the opening quote, is Emilienne telling the dedication of a woman. That men think they know us, but in fact they know very little. That it may take us a while to get aroused, but once we are determined. Nothing on this earth and nothing in heaven will make us give up on what we want and what is right. That we will fight to freedom or for death for what is right. And it makes me heavy sigh when I hear of a woman now admitting to only wanting to stay at home. That the man is supposed to be the one that makes the decisions. Those women sold themselves short. They settled for routes that led them to be submissive, so that men can get a sense of power and self. They have slapped every woman who fought for them, who died for them, in the face. The fight for pure equality is not over, and will never be, mostly because of those women who believe they hold no power. Emilienne and those like her ignited the revolution for women's rights. We are finally allowed to vote, work, and succeed. However, as a woman, you must stand tall, remain strong, and exercise those rights that were earned for you, because if you break, you will be demanded to cower at the feet of mankind. Then every fight, every death has been for a loss. That's the end. Are there any questions? Yes, Clayton.
How did Emilienne die?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Old age, I'm assuming.
So, even though it's years and years after the start of women's suffrage, do you still believe that it's wrong for women to want to, like, if it's their choice to
be-
get an education or
I think
stay,
it's-
like, be a housewife, get an MRS degree? Do you still think, even though that is their choice, that that's still wrong?
Yeah, I do. Because so many people have fought for them to have rights to vote, to have rights to go out and have whatever career you want, to get whatever education you want, and they're just throwing that all away. Just throwing it all away, everyone's sacrifice. Any other questions? Alex?
Dustin.
Dustin?
Okay, so you're saying that it's wrong for a woman to stay at home and take care of the kids or whatever, or that it's define.
Not that it's wrong,
No,
but
that
it's
it's defying. But what about the dads that choose to stay home and take care of their kids and cook and take care of the house for
They
the?
still have the same opportunity to go out and do what was sacrificed for them. I mean, I think it's a slap in the face to all those who sacrificed the opportunity. Any other questions? Alex?
Do you think households today are 50-50 towards men or women being the stay-at-home or going to work, or is it 75-25?
From my experiences, I still think it's 75-25. But I mean, that's from my family was 50-50, but I've had many friends where it's 75-25, that the mom is the one that stays at home and takes care. Any other questions? Is that everybody? Okay, awesome. Thank you.